Welcome to this explainer. Are you ready for an awesome adventure? Today, we are taking a journey called Standing on the Mount of Faith. We're going to learn exactly how to step out of the dark, gloomy places and right into the bright, beautiful light. Okay, let's dive into this.
Have you ever felt, just kind of trapped in a really dark cave of sadness? Seriously, take a second and think about that. We all have those days where things just feel super heavy. Maybe you messed up at school or you're feeling like you just aren't good enough. You get stuck in this really gloomy mood filled with doubt and discouragement. And man, it feels terrible, right? It literally feels like you've wandered into a cold, dark cave and you just can't find your way out. Look, it's completely normal to feel that way sometimes. But the amazing news we're exploring today, you absolutely, 100% do not have to stay there.
And this brilliantly illustrates the two totally different places we can choose to stand. So first up, we've got the cave of darkness. This is what happens when we start hiding from our problems, complaining about our mistakes, and letting our minds just fill up with doubt. But then, in total contrast, we have the Mount of Faith, and this is where God actually wants us to be. Up on the mountain, we're looking up, we're trusting, and because we're up so high, we're seeing everything super clearly. It's basically the difference between being stuck in the cold mud and standing right on top of the world.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about that cave for a second. The source text we're digging into today tells us something absolutely crucial. It says that staying in the cave of darkness means staying in a place where there is not a ray of the light of life. Wow. When we just sit around complaining and focusing on our frailties, which, by the way, is just a fancy word for our weaknesses or our mistakes, we are quite literally sitting in the dark. And think about what happens in the dark, right? Your eyes play tricks on you. You bump into stuff. You completely lose sight of the truth that's right in front of you. That is exactly what happens to our hearts when we choose to stay in that cave.
Which brings us to a really interesting word, eclipse. You've probably heard this in science class, right? It's when a shadow totally blocks out the sun. Well, spiritually speaking, there's an enemy who absolutely loves to create an eclipse in your life. Now picture this, a tricky, wicked-faced deceiver. And he doesn't look like a scary monster, no beast-like features at all. Instead, he tries to look harmless. He might dress up in a priest's tunic, even throw on some fake angel wings, pretending to be the good guy. But don't be fooled, he's a total trickster. His entire goal is to cast what our source actually calls a hellish shadow right between you and Jesus. He wants to block your view of the bright, beautiful sun so you just stay stuck in that dark cave.
So the crucial point is, how exactly does he cast that shadow? Well, he does it by whispering lies to us. He sneaks in and whispers things like, he doesn't love me, or he'll never forgive me, or my mistakes are just way too big this time. The text points out that we actually start to believe our sins are too hard to be cured. We start thinking we owe this massive debt that's just impossible to pay off. And guys, these are the exact specific lies the tricky enemy uses to keep you sitting there in the cave, just mourning and feeling sad over your mistakes.
But here is something really mind-blowing that we learned from our source. When we agree that our mistakes are just too big to be forgiven, we're actually giving a giant high five to the enemy. Believing these lies exalts him. That means it honors him. And honestly, even worse, it robs Jesus of his glory. It's basically like looking at Jesus and saying, yeah, I know you tried to save me, but my problem is way bigger than your power. Wow, right? When we realize that our doubts actually give honor to the trickster instead of trusting Jesus' amazing rescue plan, it really makes you want to sprint right out of that cave, doesn't it?
To really understand just how powerful that rescue plan is, we need to learn a big theological word. Ready? Atonement. Atonement is basically the ultimate rescue mission. It means that Jesus stepped in and perfectly paid the debt for every single one of our mistakes so that we could be completely, totally rescued. Think about it. When you do something wrong, it kind of creates a debt, right? Well, Jesus stepped right up and said, I'll pay for that. I'll fix it. He made the atonement so we would never, ever have to be trapped in the dark again.
And guess how much of that debt he paid? 100%. That's right, the source material tells us that his offering was full and ample. Nothing was wanting, nothing was missing. It was a complete, perfect, absolute 100% rescue mission. He didn't just pay for half of your mistakes and say, all right, you figure out the rest. No way, he paid for all of them. Once you really grasp that the rescue mission was perfectly complete, man, those tricky shadows and lies, they don't stand a chance. This actually leads us to the absolute greatest parallel of love ever shown in the history of the universe. It was the innocent, that's Jesus, who literally never did anything wrong, dying for the guilty, which is us. Our source calls this an exhibition of love that was without a parallel. There is simply nothing else like it. The perfectly innocent hero of the whole story gave himself up so that we could be free.
When you really stop and think about that kind of love, I mean, how could we ever stay in the dark cave doubting him?
And that brings us to the core command of our entire explainer today. Listen to this amazing quote from 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 11. "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord." Imagine hearing that as this loud, heroic command. It's literally a call straight from the heavens, calling you to step out of those tricky shadows, to stop mourning over your mistakes, and to step boldly out into the bright light. It is a powerful command to go forth by faith.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an action plan we can actually use. So how do we obey that heroic command? Well, we have 3 super easy, action-packed steps. Step 1, stop hiding in the dark. You have to make the choice to stop complaining and sitting in that sadness. Step 2, look up at Jesus. Look directly to your helper. And step 3, stand strong on the mountain. By focusing on him instead of those tricky, deceptive shadows, you climb right out of that gloomy cave and plant your feet firmly on the mount of faith.
Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, that sounds awesome, but how do I actually stay on the mountain when I start feeling sad again? Well, stepping out of the cave definitely takes practice. We have to educate our minds, discern exactly who Jesus is, and train our minds in faith. Think about it like this. Just like an athlete has to practice their sport every single day to get strong, we have to be spiritual athletes. We have to train our brains to remember who Jesus is so we can stand strong under any temptation to slide back into that dark cave.
Because here is the absolute best part. On the mount, we have correct views of Jesus, and the shadows just completely disappear. Our text tells us that once we're up there on the Mount of Faith, the enemy's shadow simply cannot trick us anymore. That hellish shadow cannot eclipse our view. When you've trained your mind to see Jesus correctly, to see his 100% full and ample rescue mission, the lies just vanish in the bright sunlight. Poof, gone.
And what exactly is that correct view? What is the beautiful truth we can finally see clearly in the light? The truth on the mountain is this: Jesus is good, he's merciful, and he loves us completely. It becomes so incredibly clear that we absolutely must not let our hearts be encouraged in cruel unbelief of his goodness, his mercy, and his love. When we stand up on the Mount of Faith, we finally understand just how loved and forgiven we really are. We can breathe the fresh air and just see for miles.
So I want to leave you with one final super empowering question as we wrap up our explainer today. Will you stay in the shadows, or will you step into the light on the Mount of Faith? The very next time you feel sad or you make a mistake, remember you have a choice. You don't have to listen to that tricky trickster. You don't have to sit in the dark cave of doubt. You can train your mind, trust in the ultimate rescue mission, and stand strong right in the light. The choice is yours. And let me tell you, the view from the top of the mountain is incredible. Keep looking up, keep stepping forward, and I'll catch you next time.